how to use UV Unwrap modifier to modify and color your textures to get better effect for your objects. So in this case, we'll be using a simple box. In the modify tab, we will going into the settings and type in UV to get the UV Unwrap modifier there. Once you have it applied, you will need to scroll down and navigate towards the Edit UVs area. Click on the Open UV Editor, and after a few seconds, you'll be getting a small window like this. If we expand that with the window size to get a bit of a clear understanding, and if we zoom out, you can see that this is the actual all the faces that the object contains will be overlaid on top of each other, which is not very useful because we can't actually then see all of these different objects together. So the best way is just click and hold, click and select Control A. That will select all objects in your current shape. And then under Mapping tab here, we will go and navigate and select Unfold Mapping. From this one here, there's only two choices. We always want to select Walk to the closest face, and then we can click OK. And then as you can sort of see, the entire object has been unwrapped to each face to be shown within this zone. So this zone here that you can see, the checkered one, that's your texture size. That means that all of these areas here that I'm selecting now, they are basically not part of your scene, and basically that can be blank, that can be black or white, or that can be whatever color you want. It doesn't really affect your object as well because that's just empty space. And this is the actual space that's usable inside these little squares. So once we do the unwrapping, we want to sort of try and apply the texture to this as well. So you would usually do this after you have applied the texture if you want to sort of just add things to your texture, but you can also apply it on a blank screen, a blank object like I have just done now, which is going to be black. And then we can go under tools, we can go and select render UV template, and here you can leave everything as is and just change the size of the width and height to be something more high res. I usually recommend 4K. So usually you would take this number that you usually have as a default, which is 1024, and then you just time that number by amount of so for example, if it's 4K, it's going to be 4000, but rather than going just 4000, you can actually type this in to be 4096, which is always a implementation of this basic number. So in this case, what I'm trying to say is if you go to a calculator and you go 1024 times 4 times, you will get 4096 pixels. So this is the number you should enter. This is better for the gaming engine rather than just using a typical 4000, because all of these gaming engines like the Unreal, like the Twinmotion and so on, they all use the standard numbers like this to create the textures. So if you create something which is 4000, it will actually then still make it as a 4096, meaning you will lose a little bit of that resolution while it's trying to convert. So it's always better to do it like this. And if you're confused what I'm trying to say, just ignore what I'm saying and just type in whatever number you want. So you can type this to be 4000, but I prefer if you do go and type in 4096, up to you really. And then when you're ready with this, go render UV template. You can leave everything else as is. So this will then show you your template. Now, depending on the resolution, because this is 1 in 4 zoomed out, it sometimes might appear as if it's not working properly. But if you start zooming in, you can actually see that all the line work is here. It just doesn't show it properly when you're zoomed out at 4 times the resolution. So that's fine. So then we would save this one, and we can use it later. So basically, when you save this one, just save it as a JPEG file, and we can close down the actual menu here as well. Um, so with this one, once you have it saved, we will open this one up in Photoshop, that saved file that you saved, and basically this is what we have here. All right. Um, basically, let me just go up here. All of these areas here that you can see outside of the box, these are non-relevant areas like I said before, and you can do whatever you want. You can squiggle and draw anything in there. It doesn't really affect anything. It's only the stuff inside these squares that's actually representing your object. And in this case, because I'm using a simple box, it will have only literally these these six squares or rectangles that actually represent the box. If your shape is more complex, you will have many more elements, but they will always be designated by this green line, which showcases that's the boundary line. So anything outside it is irrelevant. Anything inside that boundary line is actually your object and your texture. So what I've done previously is I just literally typed in these text numbers here to say side 1, side 2, and basically we want to save this one as, and you can save it as the original image, which I saved under cube, but I actually like to save it under something else that says cube modified, um, and just override that one. And basically always go for the maximum quality. If yours is set somewhere else, always scroll it to the right side, and that will give you the best possible outcome you can have in terms of the quality for the JPEGs, because why not? Okay, so back in here we can go back to our materials, and under the diffuse color or the base color we can select a map. We go select bitmap, same as any other sort of texture loading really. We select our cube modified, and then we just drag and apply this to the object itself. Okay, and we click on show in viewport, and then you can sort of see that our sides are all here, and it seems to be working perfectly. And the beauty of this is you can actually have a proper texture, whatever that is, paving or some facade elements. So you don't have to start from scratch, far be it from that. So you can actually then apply and render any map. Once you have your unwrap multiply applied, you can then uh, modify your texture. So if I go back to this one, I can start showing you, you can sort of start putting the edges, so you can start marking these edges. Now the thing is, like I said, because only the inside matters, we could start this here and we can sort of draw on this side there, and on that side there we can oversize these lines, and they're not really going to impact anything because these will not be showing at all. So I'm just going to do this quickly from far. Don't ever do this because, see for example here, I'm selecting this to be the green line, and if I draw a line there, and if I actually zoom in, you'll see that it's not, bloody hell, I actually did it fairly well. But sometimes you could actually click and your line might be here, but it looks like you've drawn it properly from afar. So always try to zoom in when you're doing these things, to ensure you're absolutely on point where you're actually drawing. Okay, so you don't have to do this. I'm just sort of showing you this as an example that I'll be highlighting the edges. So typical Photoshop, nothing too fancy, far from it. And here as well. Okay, there and there. And then maybe what I'll do, I'll select one of these edges. Oops, I'll select one of these and just do this as well. So you can hold Alt and right click to actually adjust the size of your brush in Photoshop. I'm sure you know this already, but a little bit of extra information doesn't hurt. And then basically we can go File, Save As, and just save this as a JPEG. Again, I will save it under the same cube modified. And because the texture is already applied and loaded in 3D Max, it should automatically update once you save your Photoshop file. And as we can sort of see here, it does. Brilliant. And if I scroll around, you can sort of see that that's the angle that we highlighted before. As you can see, this is a fairly low res showing in the viewport itself. Of course, when we do a render, it's going to be much higher resolution. If I go and take this window here, you can sort of see that this is actually a proper resolution there because we actually chose a 4000 pixels texture. The reason why it's showing up really badly in viewport is because 3D Max doesn't really allow you to showcase all the textures in full resolution because you will just usually take up all your resources and it will just crash. But in case you're feeling like this is not enough for you to see what the hell you're trying to do, I recommend you going to Views, Viewport Background, and Configure Viewport Background tab. From there, we can go back to display performance and you can adjust the texture maps and more importantly, the viewport background environment to be showing you something else. So in this case, if I go for 1096, because that's our texture size, basically then we'll try and do this. You can do the same for these other ones, but I don't recommend you do this because what's showing up in the viewport isn't really important. It's not going to do anything until you restart your 3D Max, but that's how how you would be able to do it. Okay, and as you can sort of see, you can apply different things and textures to any one of these. If I go back to Photoshop, you can start copy pasting elements in there manually if you want to create your own texture.